Yeah, you will better. Check, check, check. Check, check. That's all. Ayush, Ayush. Check, check.
Let's say this program is like
Check. Please have a seat. Check. We start. We'll be starting in next 5 minutes. So please settle down. Also, I would like to request everyone, as we're not very high on numbers here in the room, if you could come in the front rows, so it might look a little packed for us and more engaging. That would be really nice. And it's not an issue because we are recording this, and the people who couldn't show up today, we can obviously send them this panel discussion through a video. So let's start this panel discussion. If I have the permission of all the panelists here. Right. So, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this panel discussion on accessing climate finance for the Global South, which is organized by Indian Youth Climate Network and Development Alternatives. It's wonderful to see those of you who have come here and joined us for this discussion. And we're eager to engage with one of the most pressing challenges of the time, which is climate finance, access, solutions, and challenges in the Global South. Before we begin, I'd like to invite everyone to settle in and ensure that your phones are on silent and get ready for what promises to be a very engaging discussion. The numbers, remind us of the urgency. The global south requires $6 trillion by 2030 to meet just half of their climate goals. Yet current annual climate finance flows total only $1.46 trillion, which is less than 25% of the required amount. This gap underscores that the need for bold strategies and collaborative solutions is very important. Now, let me briefly introduce our panelists today. We have Dr. Shantanu Basu. He's the project director at HCL Harit, HCL Foundation. He has over 18 years of experience in CSR, project management, and policy advocacy, leading impactful environmental initiatives. We have with us Ms. Jui Joshi, who is a partner at Climate Collective. She drives climate entrepreneurship, impact metrics, and women focused programs across South Asia. We have with us Mr. Nakul Sharma, who is the program coordinator at Climate Action Network South Asia, aka CANSA. He specializes in energy security, climate diplomacy, and the geopolitics of climate finance. We have Ms. Gayatri Reddy, who is the founder of Now Venture Studio and Create Foundation, advancing decarbonization, urban planning, and sustainability innovation in the global south. To set the tone for today's discussion, I'd like to gently remind our speakers that to keep the responses limited to 4 to 5 minutes per question, and we can ensure a dynamic and balanced dialogue with that. We'll also have some time for the Q&As from the audience. So we'll get to that after the discussion is done. With such an accomplished panel, let's dive into our first theme, which is the role of private finance in climate action. And before I begin that, I'll just take my seat there so that we can proceed with the panel themes. Right. So, to give you some context, in 2022, private finance mobilized by public initiatives reached $21.9 billion, and that is like a 52% increase from last year, which shows the importance of private finance. But however, to meet the global targets, we need much more private finance for climate actions. My first question is to Mr. Shantanu Basu. Sir, corporate social responsibility frameworks in India often focus on short term social needs. How can companies be motivated to reimagine their CSR strategies to prioritize climate adaptation and mitigation projects in the global south?
Sure. Thanks for this opportunity. And so, corporate social responsibility, those who are not aware of it, let me briefly present that. It's a part of a law where a part of the profit, rather than being taxed, is kept with the corporates to be spent on various social, environmental um, actions, project on ground, definitely impact oriented and measurable and scalable project. Now, as we are talking about global south or similar countries, there are only few countries in the world which have similar law. Probably recently started in Nepal, some similar in South Africa. But other than that, not many countries has any of this law, which kind of uh, pushes the corporates to take certain activities towards climate action. Now, given I like to bring a context of a recent report published by CSR Box on India's CSR. So, top 300 companies they have spent around 14,000 crore last year on various climate and sustainability practices. Now, uh, this was not the trend previously. So even 3 4 years ago, the percentage of fund that goes to environment and sustainability used to be less than 5%. But because of a boom on ESG, on sustainability, and every company want to reduce their carbon footprint, their emission, or any kind of a impact that the business or their value chain may be creating, the investment has gone. So recent survey talks about an investment of around 13% in this area. Still, the education sectors gets a huge quantum, around 18%, plus skill development and livelihood training gets around 13%. On the additional fund, so it's not that certain crisis like we have seen during the COVID time in 2020, 2021, where definitely through CSR corporations had brought in a lot of additional funds, and that's 2 3 years. One thing is definitely on health aspect, and one health aspect, the spending has increased. And also, if we look at those 2 3 years in terms of prescribed, what is by law should be the CSR pen, corporation have spent much more to um, meet the need of the hour. So that is really great, and that probably gives us hope that the climate action things may go up. Uh, I'll say the biggest challenge that we face on certain things is measuring our impact. Now, CSR things also in terms of law, the long-term projects can be only for at at max 3 years with plus one base year. That actually, so climate and action projects, uh, though all the corporation are kind of most of the corporations understand that it should be a long term project to bring meaningful impact. but it's also true because of certain aspect of law. It's certainly difficult. Not all the climate action elements it can be brought a meaningful impact within that time frame. So it needs to be structured. The project design, the theory of change needs to be well kind of a made and monitor and accessible to everyone, all the stakeholders. The partnerships are very critical. And before I end, I'll say, uh, if I talk about it, like I mentioned, it's just 40,000 for 14,000 crores, which it's not a huge budget compared to the ministry or the government budget in the states and the union ministry budget. So it can. So for scale up or so this fund can be definitely used to create local impactful model, but to scale up those local impactful model, it needs a lot of skip kind of a convergence with government fund, convergence with various other multilateral and bilateral agencies to come together and look for the scalable project and how to leverage within the schemes of the government's institutions and their processes uh, to look for or a better future for from the outcome that these local projects achieve. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And whenever we talk about private investment in climate projects, the whole debate about de-risking of these investments come into play. So my next question is to Ms. Gayatri. And what, according to you, are the strategies that governments or institutions can adopt to de-risk these investments and attract more private capital to these projects?
Thank you, Kshitij. Warm welcome to everyone here. Um, I feel like the first most important thing is to understand the problem. And once you have understood the problem, you have to create opportunities for collaboration in order to create the solutions. So the logical next step is for public-private partnerships to come into place. And what does this mean, right? In while private organizations sort of help de-risk and they sort of um, enable and nurture the early stage ideas that are solutions for the problem, the public organizations need to create regulation around it. They need to create long-term focused schemes and grants, and then but then together we both sides have to create capacity building programs because no we can keep investing and investing, but if we don't have the skill sets that are required to be part of the solution, then then there is no multi-stakeholder approach to solving these problems. So that is the first step. The second step would be to create innovation sandboxes. So when you look at large, difficult challenges like decarbonization, um, right, especially in like the built environment or supply chain or hard to abate sectors, we need sort of innovation sandboxes where it where ideas can be nurtured, but there has to they cannot be um, deep in regulatory framework. They need to be sort of in like a bubble for a bit in order to validate the ideas, in order to nurture the ideas, in order to get a proper proof of concept of the ideas, right? And thirdly, and most importantly, is of course public initiatives that are focused on long-term solving for long-term externalities, right? We need to anticipate, but we also need to make sure that the schemes or grants or solutions that are available are not just available because it's what's happening right now. It needs to be available for a period of time where the ideas can can be nurtured and can grow to a certain point where they really get to the point where they're solving for the problem.
Thank you, Gayatri. And we know that a lot of startups are now emerging in the developing economies and global south in the climate space. So let's talk about the specifics and the nitty-gritties about the practical aspects of it. My next question is to Ms. Joshi. Climate-focused startups usually get a challenge of getting funding for their projects. So, what are the practical solutions or specific financing models, according to you, that can bridge this gap and ensure that they survive for longer?
So let me and first thank you for having me, Stitch, and warm welcome to everyone. Glad to be here. I think when we talk about climate change, it's very broad, and when we talk about financing mechanisms in a broader sense, we can't really generalize a lot of the solutions here, right? So first, I want to talk about the mitigation aspects, and when we talk about climate tech startups in mitigation, which means energy mobility, we know that there's been a flow of funding to these kind of technologies already. Right, it's already a well-established sector. We know that there's private sector interest in these sectors. Right, e-mobility has been going on. Of course, the success is due to subsidies, and so there has been de-risking to scale these technologies up. But energy is a very well settled. There's no problem in attracting private sector finance to this at all, right? But we're talking about sectors which are more difficult, right? Like the entire climate adaptation and resilience space. This space, one, I feel today the taxonomies itself are not established in the space. So a startup first to know whether it's an adaptation or resilience startup, and then to attract adaptation financing towards the startup is tough today, right? For example, I'll give you a very tangible example. We ran an India Africa accelerator with BII for adaptation and resilience startups. We put out a call for applications and we received a really low response. And you're wondering what's wrong, why? Because otherwise there's a big response. And so we started talking to some of these startups and they said, oh, we didn't even realize that we are eligible for such a program because the taxonomy is not in place. They don't even know that they're adaptation and resilience startups. So we have to establish first what it means for these kind of difficult sectors, and then move towards also then investor education for investors to understand which are these sectors that they can put their money in. Today, we have investors who want to invest in certain co-benefits apart from mitigation. So we're seeing a rise in investors focusing on co-benefits, but there's a lot more investor education in terms of what are the KPIs that they can track, and how they can look at these harder sectors, right? Um, there are certain companies or technologies, particularly in the circular economy space, I would say, like plastic waste mitigation, etc. Um, that are very local in nature, and even scalable models today are not available. They are very localized and they don't scale. So these are actual issues that don't inspire investor confidence, and so we need blended finance options. We can't just rely on equity funding. So we do need CSR supporting the first few grants. We need government coming in to support these grants, and after these technologies mature to a certain level where they become scalable, then we will see private sector funding coming in. So I would say, yeah, I'll stop here, but
Yeah, I mean, you rightly said that how broad it is right now, and especially at a time when countries can't even come to a consensus on the definition of climate finance and how taxonomies can play a role in that, but they are yet to develop. Bridging the climate finance gap again comes as a crucial issue, and my next question is to Mr. Nakul Sharma. Sir, most multilateral climate finance for developing countries is offered as loans. And then the debate from their side is that we cannot trust the governance systems in the developing countries and we see them as risky investments. So, how, according to you, can we, you know, solve this imbalance while also ensuring that investor confidence can also be taken into account?
Uh, Thank you, Kshitij, and warm greetings to all the fellow panelists and to all the people, those who are in this room listening to us. I think as most of the speakers has already said, I think the problem lies not just uh, I mean, there's let's also understand a bit of context into the while jumping into a narrative which is already been set. Uh, I think we are in COP29, and it is very essential for us to understand. First of all, is that um, no one is against private sector investment. We of course know that if you put one penny from public sector, private sector comes with a three penny sort of investments as a counterpart. So private sector investment is the way to go forward as far as areas and sectors which have a a very clear rate of return. It is only the issue with areas and sectors which do not have a credible line of return. And my fellow speaker has just very clearly laid down that adaptation and I mean areas which require resilient building, largely adaptation and also loss and damage are the areas where we need private sector investments. Oh, public sector investment. Sorry, correcting myself. Now, coming on to the fact of loans, we all know that uh, there have been numbers which have been published by the OECD at international level. Um, we had the earlier climate finance goal, which was 100 billion climate finance goal, and that goal had not been met until 2021, 2022, when the recent reported figures reported that finally we have touched down the figure of 115 billion. Now, if we start unpacking even those figures, uh, around two-thirds of those figures are largely loans, and these are loans not at softer rates. These are pretty much nearer to the market rates loans. The grant element of these loans is very minuscule. The problem lies is not is not in setting a narrative where it is grant versus loan. Of course, we have a solution for every situation. So for sectors which are energy related, for renewable energy, which are already proven, there's of course private sector investments which is going to be there. But the matter of the fact is at what rate you are getting those investments. That's a second question that I also want to bring to the table for this discussion. And we have had several rounds of conversation during 2023, during India's G20 presidency. This topic is already picked up by the ongoing Brazilian presidency, where they have asking that for sectors which are mature, which are running, you need to tackle the issues of the rate at which investments are coming in India. And one of the panelists also touched upon that you need to create environment for investments to come in. What does environment means in developing countries? It is political stability, it is proper grid infrastructure, it is the availability of labor. I think if we can take an example of most of the South Asian countries, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, everyone has, I mean, the basic, tick boxes where they, are, right in these spaces. But then where does the problem lies? The problem lies in the way the international financial institutions have been capacitated to, provide loans to global southern economies, and they are not in the mood. And it's a larger political priority to just give uh, loans to club loans and grants into one amount and be intransparent about it, and then ask the question that why are you fighting about grants and loan? We are definitely not fighting about grants and loan. We are absolutely not anti-private sector. We welcome private sector investments, but there are specific areas where you need public sector initiatives. You need all of that. Why does I ask back? Why does India is the has led the solar revolution? We have the lowest per capita rate of solar power generation in the world. Why still does India has to get climate debt at a rate of 9%, whereas in Germany you get it only at 2.1%? It's international climate finance coming into solar power plants. So I request not to fall to these narratives and really clarify while we put out our narrative forward. Thanks.
Right. Thank you, sir. And when we talk about financing, we also would like to aware our viewers about the tools of climate finance. And on that, Mr. Basu, do you see tools like adaptation bonds, which is kind of new right now, and also blended finance broadly as a key to mobilize the funds for the large scale initiatives in regions in the global south like India?
Uh, in terms of adaptation bonds, the only thing is the current CSR law lacks a certain clarity, because as I mentioned earlier, that they look for 3 years long-term projects, then with a 1 year cool-off period, government wants impact to be reported on those projects. Now, that's how long-term projects can be as per the law. But definitely those bonds need to survive more than that period. Now, there is also another serious portion of the narrative that any money that is being generated out of the CSR fund has to be brought back to the similar initiative that the fund has been invested. Now, the only thing is the CSR can come in and maybe may initiate certain portion of this adaptation bonds. But definitely, after the project is over, it will be very difficult for the CSRs to kind of ensure that those money that has been generated out of those bonds to be brought back things. So I think it needs government guidelines, things in case CSR come in for those kind of bonds, how they can report those things, and how the benefits can go to the community, and how that can be monitored in a centralized platform through which it's not should not be a burden on the corporate to continue that monitoring. That's not. Sorry, I missed the second part of the question.
So the second part was how blended finance broadly can be a key.
So, as all the speakers are mentioning about, that's the key. So, as I've also mentioned previously, that we can do local project. It's not a huge fund, and that's also it's not only environment. If we talk about in India, definitely there is a huge need for education. There is a huge need for health. There is a huge need for wash. Water is a common resource, but getting scarce day by day. So definitely those areas also needs investment, sanitation, health, one health approach, those things. So it's not probably only climate finance. So it's not that corporation will be kind of a very blindfolded to invest on climate finance, but need to look at a holistic approach, an integrated approach to look at everything. So we have to invest in all these kind of a thematic areas, not only one area. So considering about that, it will be very important for other funds. But what CSRs can really play, what we do actually, we create various source code models, various small pilots that can be scaled at various level by local by agencies, by national agencies, by even international by agencies. While we talk about like we talk to our uh, customers, our clients, and we present a model, so they find similar model that can be probably implemented in parts of Africa or parts of Latin America, and they talk to their partners and their business partners and take those things forward. So that is kind of a role the CSR should play currently, looking at various things. And definitely we need to like there are various avenues, things I'm not saying. So either it's adaptation bonds, maybe bilateral, multilateral funding, certain soft loans if there those underlying conditions are favorable, definitely. So should be looked at, and how that can be leveraged to create bigger impact. I think that should be our focus. Thank you.
I think that's the best answer one could get, sir. So we also have Mr. Sagar with us from Climate Reality. He's a youth climate leader. And also, given your background in blended finance, I would like to forward this question to you to have your opinion on this, on how can blended finance be used for large scale, even short scale climate activities in India? Plus, what do you think can be the youth involvement in this area?
So I think I'll take on the question about blended finance first. Um, so I think blended finance has kind of come up as like a key word over like the past, I would say like 4 5 years in India. I think the first one that kind of came up was like the um, skill impact bond by NSDC and Dell Foundation as well, that came up with that launched like the first one, which then ended up mainstreaming blended finance more. So now, if you talk in finance circles, a lot of people will tell you about outcome oriented finance, which is basically that if a certain project reaches a certain metric in terms of creating impact, then a commercial player will come in order to scale that particular project. So initially, that particular project is funded by a philanthropy in order to build, I would say, um, like just show that there's a market. So I would say blended finance, the way that it functions is that even sectors such as wash, blended finance is able to attract private players to enter the space because the philanthropy money that comes in, it helps establish like a proof of concept or a market which allows private players to enter and increases their confidence in the space to perform. So I think blended finance can play a huge role in underfunded sectors. When it comes to young people, I'll quickly just I want to talk a bit about what climate realty leaders do in India. I think one of the great things that they've done is they've actually just built a platform for all of us to connect. And I think it's a network of around 450, 500 young people who are just from India, and they'd conducted a training on how we can talk about the climate crisis to other people. Because I believe that as of right now as well, there are quite a few people that do not take it as seriously enough, and it does need to be taken seriously as well. Then climate also has intersections with almost every other sector. And being from India, I think climate's intersection with agriculture is something that is quite important that needs to be tackled, and we need to create like more climate smart agriculture. I think is what we kind of need at this point. But coming back to young people, I would say that we need to kind of figure out a platform, or we need to work with um, senior leadership in the space who've already paved the way for us and kind of reach out to them for support. Like in this panel itself, uh, we have great individuals who I know would be willing to lend out support and just at least talk to people and help them improve, increase their knowledge. So I think from young people we need to have someone give us a platform where we can connect with others, which Climate Realty is doing quite well. And the other bit is funding our own projects. Like a lot of us, we have a couple of people in the audience. Like we have Imran, who's running his own for-profit or and non-profit as well, focusing on agriculture. I think even like getting that a small amount of seed funding, be it even 3,000 USD, is really a big way for young people to get that sort of encouragement to put and dig their feet in. Because one of the things that at least I like, even when I saw my NGO, my mom was just like, um, you should focus more on getting a better job, doing something else. So even for us to convince our parents is a slightly harder thing. But if you are able to tell your parent that, hey, there is someone who's mentoring me, or there's someone who is actually invested even like a token sum, I think it goes a long way in for young people to take forward the initiatives that they have. Yeah.
Thank you, Saga. Being a youth delegate at COP29 myself, I totally resonate with your answer. And when we talk about blended finance, our speakers have told the potential it holds. But when it comes to tech startups in Global South, they face a very difficult situation where intellectual property rights are very expensive to source from the developed nations, and getting finance for these projects becomes another problem. My next question is to Ms. Gayatri, that how do you think we can tailor mechanisms for these deep tech startups in Global South to get these funds and also technology for climate actions?
Thank you, Kshitij. So I come from a background where I'm an entrepreneur that has started my own venture studio. This I didn't do this just, because it's what's needed or these are the trending words. I was on ground for almost 5-6 years before this. Um, I have a foundation and I was doing work around need for better urban planning and development. While I was on ground doing different projects, I understood the interconnectedness of various issues and how we need to solve for it by, multi-stakeholder approach. While today there is a lot of i- interesting ways to find funding, I cannot insist enough about or cannot emphasize more on the fact that deep tech solutions need to be handheld, need a lot of support and need a lot of investment into R&D in the very early stages as well, right? So now we discussed that government initiatives, we discussed private investment coming in, and private investment, is not only coming in the form of VCs, etc. It's also coming in corporate CVCs, and even educational institutions today are have their own small seed funds, etc. So while all of this is coming in, we also need to be flexible, right? We need to sort of say milestone. When we say milestone based funding, it's not milestones that just say, oh, is the outcome profitability? It should also consider impact. It should also consider on ground change that it's able to bring. Um, and and again, coming back to the venture studio model, right? What it really means is, besides the financial capital or investment that we bring, we also come in as institutional co-founders, where we bring human capital. We will bring you support that will sort of that will help you while you, as a technical entrepreneur or a technical background based business, is looking at the challenge from your perspective. We come in to help you commercialize your idea, right? And to commercialize your idea, there are a lot besides the basic things like, register your company, the legal, financial, HR, etc. You also need to figure out product market fit. Where do you commercialize? Who are your potential customers? How much are they willing to pay? Are they really willing to pay? Is it too soon for them, etc.? So I feel like this is the kind of support that we need to bring, and um, this is really the solution to large problems that we are facing as a collective or as a society.
Thank you, Gayatri. And we'll move to the next theme, which is about ensuring inclusivity and local impact. In 2022, just to give you some context, because we talked about sets and subsets within the broader categories of climate finance. So we have adaptation finance, then we have resilience under it. In 2022, adaptation finance reached $32.4 billion. Yet the global south requires at least $160 billion annually to meet the needs of the most vulnerable communities. My question is to Miss Joy Joshi. Ma'am, women-led ventures are often underrepresented in when we talk about climate finance, despite their potential to drive innovative and community-focused solutions. And what changes do you think are needed in climate finance system, not only to remove the barriers, but also to create opportunities for women to come up and try to thrive in this sector as entrepreneurs?
So I think DEI is extremely essential even in the space of technology, and I feel more so. And I just want to take a minute to say that we've been talking about blended finance models, and we've been talking about grants and loans, and we have a corporate representation and CSR. Today, if you see maximum projects that support women and climate, all of these projects are livelihood-based projects, or they are micro entrepreneurship projects, or they are community-focused projects that making women more aware about, post-disaster, or building resilience and how to cope up with disasters, etc. If you see, there are very few projects that support women to scale up and women in tech, right? So if you see the entire landscape of women in tech, we see again, when we talk about climate tech, it's broad. So here, if you see the energy sector, there was a study done that in most global accelerator programs where go-to-market strategies for women, there were about 6% women founders only in energy, right? This percentage is a little higher in the space of circular economy or agri-tech. Um, uh, so so this is a huge gap when it comes to women in tech and women driving technology, right? I always give this example that if women are not included in the product design itself, women don't drive tech, then how are women supposed to use that tech? It's not customized for them. So if you're making technology today for farmers, a large part of smallholder farmers on the farm doing the work are women. If the implements are not made for their hands, they cannot optimize it and they cannot use it efficiently, right? So we need more women in tech and women coming in the space in all sectors of climate tech if we want better adoption of these technologies. That's one. However, when we come to financing, one of the key things in financing is that the first set of financing for any new company or a small scale company comes in the form of loans and borrowings, right? Women don't have enough assets to get loans from banks, and that's the first barrier that any woman faces in the space. Um, so the first step of where the financing comes in and how a early stage company thrives to become a large scale company itself is a barrier for women. So better schemes by banks which are coming up, there are better schemes by bank from bank now specifically targeted towards women founders are coming up, but we need more of these to support women in early stages. Second step of more financing towards women founders is that we need more investor education and reduction in investor bias that is there, and it is very much documented to be there. So it's not that we feel it, but it's actually documented that there is investor bias towards funding women startups. Um, when it is proven that women-led startups actually do better in terms of ROIs, in terms of better cash flow management, we still see that there is not enough investor confidence. Still, mixed founder teams get more money. So if there is a female founder and a male founder, there are higher chances that they would attract investment. If it is an all-women team, the percentage is absolutely minuscule, right? They're very unlikely to be funded. Um, uh, then I feel like women founders also need a lot more support when it comes to how to get financing. So capacity building also on the women founders front on how they should pitch to investors. How do they go out and get the right sources of funding, etc. So the capacity building has to be done on both sides for the ecosystem to come together for more inclusive solutions. And I just spoke about women, but there are other underrepresented sections as well that we can speak about, like underrepresented geographical areas that need the same kind of support. Youth need support as well when it comes to getting financing for youth. So yeah, but I'll stop here. Thank you.
I just want to add that one of the programs that Jui's organization runs, Climate Collective. I'm so happy to be part of their 2024 cohort. They have chosen 20 women in India who are women founders in India who they support, and it's an amazing program. And it really is, it really defines outcome based training that she's talking about. So yeah, so that could be one way to capacity build for not just women, but also in other sectors. But yeah, thank you for allowing me to be part of the program, Julie.
Thanks, Gayatri.
Thank you, ma'am. I think that's a potential that needs to be unlocked, especially when we talk about green sector development and climate finance actions. Now going to Mr. Shantanu Basu, sir, we talk about local scale impacts for climate actions, but when it comes to scaling up, that is a very big challenge that they are facing. How do you think we can tackle this, sir?
Um, sure. Before I answer, I just probably add a point to the previous one. So as mentioned, the women and youth. Um, in terms of CSR projects, so they're either directly implemented or implemented through their foundations or through organization who have specific documents to implement that kind of a thing. We work with more than 250 organizations to implement various projects that's there. One thing I like to highlight, and that's something very surprising, in the middle management and in the higher management, there is a very low representation of women and youth. Not sure, I can't comment on the reasons of not being present, but uh, they should youth and women can bring in lots of new ideas. I think those things needs to come in while we implement those projects, and those are very critical for that thing. Um, which we are not seeing, and it's a very general practice, because new ideas has to come in and youth has to present in those boardroom meetings to understand what is the ask for the boards, how they can implement. So there should be a direct connect from the top to the grassroots. It cannot be various channels, and then definitely there are usual distortion or usual change in direction that happens. So coming to the point that is there, so local project, in terms of local project, so if you talk about um, um, uh, in terms of board level discussions, what the main focus is, the impact. So that is the great thing, because in Government of India, when they made that law, they made the board answerable for any CSR project. It's nobody else. So board looks for the impact. It's not just that some project is being implemented, but at the end of a long-term or a short-term project, how the impact has been created, how peoples and employees of the corporation or the company are engaging in the project. It's very important. It's not doing a project, but also building a ownership among their employees so that they can connect with that project. That is also the purpose. It's not that probably certain members in the board, they or certain families who are running the company, they are doing this initiative. They want to inculcate the same giving back idea to the entire workforce. That's the opportunity, and that's kind of things. Uh, so what is coming out of there is what is more measurable, the things. So if I talk about a climate project, probably the most common project to do is probably plantation projects. Probably 99.9% of organization who are doing any CSR, they must be doing in plantation, because probably, okay, saplings can be counted. It can be a agency. Now, how a plantation project is being executed over by years, it's a one-time activity or a long-term activity that differs between different companies and all. That's a different story. But because it's easily measurable, that's how those projects. Now, other projects, like if I talk about other adaptation projects, like you mentioned that taxonomy or definition of climate action or climate adaptation, it is different. How to measure that climate adaptation, whether you'll be able to measure it within 3 to 4 years, that's very there is no clarity in that. How to do that kind of a project which doesn't have a clarity. There is no guidelines from Government of India how to measure, what are the indicators of that. Even if we talk about the national indicator framework under SDG, it talks up very briefly on certain aspect. We have so much. We have set our national biodiversity framework framework, but unfortunately, we don't have any direct biodiversity target as part of Niti Aayog or SDG target. So until unless we know how to measure this project, it's very difficult for many organizations how to report those things. So I think first of all, a uniform criteria to measure certain project or climate finance project, it should be established. Government should bring in certain indicators, a elaborative indicator to measure climate finance or any climate action project. That will be very important. Once people understand that thing, that how to measure, they can definitely find a way how the existing project can be linked to that, or they can do that project. Until unless there will be definitely a swing happening, because people will be always looking for low hanging fruit. Okay, fine, I can measure that easily. I don't need to invest too much just to show a huge impact, because if I do a 5 crore project and spend 50 lakh just to measure the impact of it doesn't make sense of that. So we really need to kind of do a cost benefit analysis, and every organization should not reinvent their M&E tools, techniques, and practices. So if there is a platform or a unique tool to measure those things, I think that local project will get more popular in various sectors, and a lot of corporation will come in to the play to implement those projects. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And when we talk about local impact, community driven solutions also come into play. And my next question is to Sagar. Sagar, you've worked in youth global community networks like Youngo. And what do you think are community driven solutions for climate finance models, or anything that you would like to share by your experience and your working in these global networks?
So I think I think I'll take something that's a bit more local. I think when it comes to global networks, the what usually happens is that you see what's working in other countries, and then we try to replicate it or see what works in our context. But I think one such community in India that's worked out is called Swatch. So Swatch is based out of Pune, and they are. By any chance, do any of you all have a better understanding of Swatch to take this ahead? Okay. So Swatch, to the best of my understanding, is how I'll explain this. They have, in a way, I would say, like unionized waste workers, and they have started, like they act as representatives between the recyclers, waste workers, and the collection agencies, in order to ensure that waste workers are paid like the right price as well. Because even further, amongst waste workers as well, women waste workers are discriminated against. They have plenty of restrictions when it comes to like the times that they can pick up, even when compared to waste workers and female waste workers. Male waste workers do get paid like 100 rupees more for like every kg of plastic waste that they collect. So Swatch has really stepped in within Pune itself, and kind of formed like a union to ensure that everyone is being paid equally. But the model of Swatch has been harder to implement in other cities within Maharashtra itself. So they are trying to figure out ways on how another coalition or something can be established. But I think the first thing for community-based impact is the community themselves to like each community knows what the issue is within themselves, but they need some one person to kind of take the lead on it for like others to follow. So I would say, and the second part also is technical assistance. Like someone has to come and tell them that if this is the issue, this is one of the ways in which you can solve it. So that at least they have options on how they can solve the issue in their community. Because even us as people who are providing finance to improve communities, like we do not necessarily understand what they want. Rather than us going over there with the finance and telling them that this is what we want to fund, I think it works out like the opposite way, where We talk to the communities, find out what the problem is, how it can be solved, try to get more like a technical advisor or something in to ensure that the solution that we are coming to or the options that we are giving the communities to choose from are beneficial and chosen by the community. And then we can go ahead and provide the finance and figure out the details for that, is how I would take it ahead.
Shantanu, we have an organization called Hasiru Dala in Karnataka. So they do similar thing, but because waste is such a hard to commercialize sort of a project, they sort of incentivize waste pickers to be stakeholders, and dignity of labor is what they look at. So that's one of the initiatives.
Thank you, Sagar and Gayatri.
Kawariwala Connect in Chennai also doing similar things. So collecting the unorganized sector and bringing for basically the rack pickers and other people. That's very important. Yeah.
It's great to know that a lot of initiatives are coming up in global south countries like India to drive solutions. My next question is to Mr. Nakul. We've talked about local. Now let's come to the global aspect of it. Now, sir, according to you, how do global forums like G20, BRICS, even COP for that matter, if they, put an impact on climate finance flows, and how can global south leverage these platforms to advocate for equitable fund distribution? And cementing on that, if you can give your views on how the new collective quantified goal is working out in this respect.
Thanks, Kshitij. I think I'll also try and respond first to Sir's remarks on how do you measure progress on adaptation and projects. The in reference to it's obvious that most of the investments will flow into areas which are already credible and which are quantifiable, so to say in simple terms. But there is negotiations going on. So just to inform the audience that under the UEA Belém work program on indicators, there's negotiations which are going on the last year COP28 draft, where it was agreed that the global goal on adaptation, which has 7 thematic targets and 4 dimensional targets, what could be the indicators to monitor progress? And just yesterday evening, there was suggestions from I think ILAC and or maybe Oasis as well that these indicators, there are roughly 5,000 indicators, which is very big number. And the deselection of indicators has been done right now. There is also a proposal which says that one set of indicators should be mandatory indicators and which everyone has to follow and report back on. And another set of indicators to remain flexible should be voluntary set of indicators which governments can choose based on their national priorities. So that's been worked out. But again, since these are climate negotiations, politics cannot be avoided. The thing is stuck where developed countries are willing to negotiate, but then developing countries are also asking that adaptation cannot happen without finance. So there has to be an indicator on means of implementation as well, especially on finance. But how credibly you have provided public sector and grant equivalent finance for meeting adaptation needs. So that's where it's a small update on adaptation. Coming back to Kshitij, your question on multilateral space and G20 or BRICS space or the COP space even. I think let's segue it into 2 spaces. Of course, we are in COP. So first, let's talk about COP. It's a UN platform. It's a UN driven process, and nothing can be better than COP. I'm very clear about that because I think we have set standards. We have set criteria. We have a set rule book in terms of the UN Convention on Climate Change. We have a Bible to refer to in terms of Paris Agreement. And if in good faith, all the negotiations and all the conversations happen based on based on good intent, then I think we should not actually have problems. But the problems do happen when countries give paramount importance to their own national interest in comparison to overall global interest, which is 1.5-degree target. So that's the core of the matter or crux of the matter on COP space. Coming back from COP and comparing it to multilateral or G20 or BRICS space, I think we also need to understand that G20 is a very, of course, it's very important. It's the genesis of G20 or even BRICS is the economic cooperation. One is G20 has been largely led by the Western Bloc, largely after the Bretton Woods, the Second World War II, called the Bretton Woods financial institutions. And the later one, which is BRICS, is again led by the emerging economies. So both these blocks are a counterbalance to each other, and whichever blocks progress, it's best for global South. I should say that it's in our benefit that, and we should leverage it. The last year G20 declaration, it was very visible that how, despite several years of demand and negotiations, the African group was not being allowed to be a part of the G20, which was allowed last year. So that was simply very welcome. But how can we leverage it to our benefit, especially on climate finance? So I think the role of multilateral space in that thing is also something which is very crucial. First and foremost is that since it's a combination of the greatest economies, the most powerful economies, they derive the political cult to influence the existing climate funds, multilateral climate funds, be it the GCF, be it the GEF fund, be it the adaptation fund. So the efficiency and efficacy of all these funds, how they function, what they fund, everything is subject to how G20 and these multilateral institutions can politically take a call. Again, not technically, it's the political will at the highest level. So it derives that. The second part of the multilateral forum comes again from the fact where I refer to my last comment, is the fact that we as global southern economies and especially emerging economies have been asking that you reform the international financial architect, which basically means you reform the World Bank. The structure of the World Bank is such that whosoever puts howsoever money, they get the corresponding voting rights. And then you can dictate the terms of the World Bank, how it behaves. So there have been various reports on the reforms and the reforms of overall financial architecture, especially World Bank, where it says that a recapitalization is very important. We, of course, know after COVID, around South Asia was the biggest region in the world where all the benefits of sustainable development in the last 10 years were undone. Most people who were again pushed back into poverty were South Asia. So how can we make sure that the World Bank provides loans and money and grants on terms which are attuned to our needs? So we need to push that reform, international financial reform, and that can only happen not through COP process, but the multilateral process, G20 process. The second part of the thing, apart from recapitalization, is the governance reform, which I've just elaborated upon. So it's very important for us to understand that not COP has its own part because it comes with set standards. It comes with set standards on CBDR. People might not want to negotiate at COP platform because every time they come and negotiate, global southern economies, show a place card that, hey, we have CBDR in hand. You need to respect equity. You need to respect historical polluters' contribution. So there is a game going on also here. I'm referring to that if they are not comfortable on COP spaces, they go into multilateral spaces. If they're not comfortable into multilateral spaces, they come into COP spaces. So that's game is going on, and all the spaces are important.
Some context to the viewers, CBDR means common but differentiated responsibilities, which is a term used how to differentiate responsibilities between the global south and the global north, basically the historical polluters and the countries who are developing. Right. Thank you, sir. And moving on to the next theme about addressing urban and regional climate needs. Urban areas are significant contributors to greenhouse gas emissions, and urban cities like Shanghai alone produces greenhouse gas emissions more than a lot of countries. So my next question is to Ms. Gayatri. Gayatri, urban areas in global south face these challenges, yet they don't figure out a way to get funding to solve this about the urban heat islands and the water stress that a lot of cities are facing. How do you think policy challenges like these can be solved?
I think because I'm going first on this topic, I just want to set context that as you know, we are as cities are growing, there's a big influx of population that's coming into cities looking for socio-economic opportunities. And we need to make spaces for people to live, people to work in, and people to even commute, right? So this is what is happening. And there's a lot of infrastructure demand that's happening, and all this infrastructure demand is leading to haphazard rapid creation of this infrastructure. And when you haphazardly and randomly create infrastructure, you use you use materials that either are reflective surfaces or highly concretized zones or spaces. So cities are just becoming these big concrete jungles that are just absorbing a lot of heat. And when you absorb a lot of heat, right, it creates urban heat islands. So that's just basic context to what is happening. And when you first look at how do you sort of solve for these, right? It is from my point of view, you have to be creative, because as Shantanu sir said that to attract finances, to attract CSR finances, etc., there is already a hierarchical system of priority areas that this financing can go into. And urban heat islands are not really on the plate at the moment, right? Because education is priority, mental health is priority, etc. So we need to sort of get creative on how to get money into the system. One is you have to use technology and technological innovation to sort of project what are the areas and how they're sort of getting impacted, or which will get most impacted. So that's one way to sort of create innovation focused finance from coming into this space. And two is hyperlocal participation. We cannot emphasize enough on, you know, involving the local people in creating solutions, because we may have big grand plans and big grand schemes, but if the local people do not allow you to be executing this, then what was the whole what did we incur all these costs for, right? So I would say when we look at creating policies looking at addressing policy challenges, one, look at really integrating the opinion of people on the ground. And when you integrate it and then create it with their involvement, then it's easy for adoption of these, right? So policies need to include that. Policies need to really include youth. Because we need capacity building and we need it for the future. And in order for the future to look bright again, we need to build skills from now. So we need to sort of project what areas are going to be most affected, because climate change is real. This is literally what we're all here for. And no matter where we are living, we are feeling the heat, feeling the impact of it, right? Cities are either getting too hot or too much rain or no rain, or etc. So I would just summarize and say hyperlocal participation, youth involvement, capacity building, policies to target these specific things, and of course, technology integration into these policies.
Thank you, Gayatri. My next question is to Miss Joshi. Ma'am, we talked about taxonomies and how standardization plays an important role. But when it comes to impact metrics of these projects across geographies, the investors are less attractive to them because they vary across geographies and sectors. Do you want to shed some light on how important these impact metrics are and how can we tackle this?
Um, Yeah, I think my colleagues have kind of alluded to that already, saying that, okay, if I take CSR projects, we know that metrics are really important. There needs to be very outcome-based tracking of any projects to even one, secure the funding, and secondly, to then go through the entire project. The progress reports have to be in place, etc. Now, when we talk about, this is still okay for a large scale company to do this impact analysis. Impact analysis, data collection, data measurement of impact is expensive. And when we talk about specifically early stage startups, this becomes quite a bit of a challenge for early stage startups to measure and report their impact. Anywhere in the world you go today and you take a analysis, you do an analysis of the early stage startups, none of the early stage startups will say that they're comfortable with impact measurement, right? And we've done this survey across, right? So we'd actually partnered up with Andy, the Aspen Network, to do a analysis of how comfortable are people with the quantification of impact. And the answer is that a very low percentage in the startup world. I think we got one startup that said that they are confident about impact measurement. Rest nobody did. And investors, they are also, there are certain frameworks for investors to calculate their impact, or so a lot of them follow iris. But many of them said that it's too complex for them. Many early stage investors say that they don't even ask for impact measurement to be done by the startup, but they do accept some qualitative impact measurement, etc. And then they expect the startup to do that after post investment. So there is a low comfort level. There is lack of clarity and awareness about how to quantify these impacts and KPIs. Now, for still the mitigation part, impact is KPI is one KPI, so it still becomes a easier process. For adaptation resilience, as Nakul rightly mentioned, there are 5,000, right? You said right now 5,000. Um, how would any technology company know this? How to quantify these 5,000 KPIs? And how would we even expect CSR to know these, like which are the right KPIs to measure and track, right? So there is a dissonance right now in the ecosystem, but we see that financing depends on measurement. So unless you can measure and quantify impact, you won't get financing. For example, we work with certain World Bank projects for deployment of solutions, and the kind of reporting that is needed to get that financing, it's very, very expensive. So a large part of the project capacity goes in actually quantification of these impacts. So as was rightly mentioned, we need better frameworks. We need much more easier and practical frameworks for early stage companies to help them. So I don't think an entire LCA makes sense for any company in early stages, because it's expensive, it's hard, and it's actually not very useful as well, because once they do it, they again have to pay to do it in the next cycle, which is not very practical. So we need very easy to use tools. We've experimented with a few tools that startups can use, and we see that investors have accepted these, etc. Adaptation resilience is a whole other aspect, because you need to see the breadth and the depth and the context, local context as well. But I feel that it's a work in progress, and the more that can be done, I feel we can unlock a lot more financing.
Thank you, ma'am. Let's be optimistic on this work in progress. And just to wrap this up, I have a common closing question for all of you. What is one line message for the youth working in climate finance in the global south that you can give to them? And also, Sagar can also give guidance to his fellow peers on that. We can start with Gayatri.
I would say, and I truly believe this, is no need to reinvent the wheel, just collaborate and see what you can bring to the collaboration.
We can hear from the youth.
At least for me, I think it's worked out is just drop a message, whoever you want to talk to, just drop a message to them on LinkedIn, say hi, check within your college if someone else wants to help out. Um, there will be someone or the other who will be like, okay, let's just give it a shot and see how it goes. And then suddenly you and your friend will start enjoying the work that you do and actually take it somewhere. So I would just say, don't be afraid to ask for help. There are a lot of people who want to help out. And yeah.
So, in my opinion, probably my vision is, if I cross that youth stage, probably. Things I prefer to probably pass on the knowledge or the process to a few youths which may not get that opportunity. So reaching the unreached is probably the best thing to do. And probably if we individually can create at least 5 youth leaders for climate, I think that will be a huge contribution and it can create a ripple effect from there. Thank you.
I think there are two aspects to it. I think one is what I totally echo, that just reach out. I think mentors are the most important thing in anybody's journey. And we need different kinds of mentors at each point. So one is mentorship for sure. The second, because you asked a specific question on the financing, I feel like we so youth can have lower risk appetites. So it's not so easy to become an entrepreneur when you're a youth, right? But there are quite very good support mechanisms available in the ecosystem. There are incubators that can provide support, resources, etc. There are options from the government schemes that help you be a fellow for a longer time and get that kind of funding. So I think just leverage what is already there in the ecosystem. And still, if there is low risk appetite, there are so many climate tech startups that need great youth to join them. So join existing companies and you can still build great impact.
Yeah, thanks. I think I've been thinking hard. I mean, it's it's a difficult question, but I think since you have asked, and since we at CAN Network also follow climate negotiations so deeply, I think I'll also link it to the kind of feeling that we have in COP29 is that at the end of the day, it is the domestic finance which is going to save us. And we have, I mean, most of us are from South Asia. We all belong to India. We are a very different country. We are one of the fastest growing economies, and yet we have the largest and sizable population, which is still falls below poverty line. We need to progress, and at the same time, we need to curtail our GHG emissions. And we need to also find out the finance for that. So what's the role for youth in all of that metrics? I think the role for youth is to go to the last mile, you know, prioritize industries which can ensure that we maintain environmental and ecosystem integrity. And of course, the data and AI are your tools to go with. So that's something that the space that we find, I personally find that Indian youth and South Asian youth can really, you know, do wonders within. So yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you,
Can I
everyone.
just add one point? Yeah, sure. Sorry. But also, it will be important if someone is looking for funding or financing in the CSR space. It will be very important to know that space that's there. So, HL Foundation, through its academy, runs a CSR course thing. So, most of the participations we have seen from youth side, a lot of participation from them. So it's an online course, totally free of cost. You can definitely apply. It's a selection process, definitely, but thing. So it'll be good to know the space if you really want to kind of looking for finance in that sector.
Thank you, everyone. And I think it's experienced people like you who act as guiding lights to us. So thank you for that. On that note, I would like to open Q&A. If you have questions, we can take them one at a time. You can raise your hands, and if they are directed to a specific panelist, you can take their name. Otherwise, any panelist can take the questions.
So I think I'm the only one in this room who is not from, you know, I belong to climate mitigation background. So I'm asking to you all the panel member that when you discuss unlocking the, you know, potential opportunity to access climate finance in the global south. So so I think this climate market, and to develop this CSR project as a climate project is can it's all these projects have a huge potential to access climate finance. So whether I don't know whether this is possible, or have you explored this opportunity also?
Okay, it depends on. I agree with you that definitely the mitigation. So all this project of climate finance, be it CSR or some other any form of blended finance, can be eligible for this. Only the thing is, what is the priority or what is the priority of the organization? What they are looking at? What is the ultimate goal they are looking at? So, in my opinion, there is a further need for awareness and what additionally can be achieved through various other reportings while they are doing climate action project. There is a need for that things, and it's not just the implementation level. Probably that need is to reach to the board level as well. So there is a push, like it is impact oriented project push for on ground projects.
Yeah, because why I'm saying this, because I have seen that many CSR foundation like Selco Foundation, Wipro Foundation, Infosys Foundation, of course, they have a huge this is fund, CSR fund. So they are just diverting this CSR fund for climate related activities, which is going to help achieve their own company goal also, because all the company these days, they have established their own a goal that our company intend to become a carbon neutral or carbon zero by 2030 or 2040, 2040 or something. They have own target. So that actually, a good opportunity to access climate finance. And these days, the more focus is completely shifting towards this ecosystem-based project, nature-based solution project, agroforestry, agriculture, regenerative agriculture, biochar. So this kind of projects, I think, when when you discuss about that how this climate finance can be accessed, so climate market is also, this is a good opportunity. I say this is a huge potential area which you can.
Sorry to interrupt. Before you answer, we'll pass the mic to the next question as well because we have limited time. And if you can keep the answers also limited, that would be great.
Hi, my name is Oyen Banerjee. I represent an international organization called Practical Action. We had very interested to hear all the examples that you had. We had a very similar project in Bangladesh funded. My question is, I'm seeing a lot of youth leaders, which is fantastic, right? And looking at you, Shantanu, there is a advantage of youth and experience, right? And Julie had mentioned earlier, there is a place for experience, is a place for money. And one of the questions that I always wonder is, with enterprises, with the energy that the youth brings in, especially if it's not money making, we know what the unicorns are doing. So if it's money making, the business case, investment case is fairly simple. You have venture capitalists lining up. For a social impact business, which is impact first, is there enough money going around? And if not, then what is the role of CSR, big companies like yourselves, to promote that space?
So maybe we can take one last question and we'll answer those, all three of them.
Yeah, thank you everyone for highlighting amazing initiatives from different parts of India. And it's good to know that climate finance is reaching the grassroots through CSR, technology companies, startups, etc. But do you think we'll see a shift where climate finance is supporting communities directly who are aggregating as cooperatives, farmer producer organizations, and also working on adaptation and resilience projects, but might not be in institutional frameworks which are favored by companies and investors? So do you think we'll see a shift where climate finance is more accessible, diverse, and directly goes to the farmers that we want to impact? Yeah, thank you.
Maybe I can I can answer first. So I feel like because I'm sitting on the other side of the table, right, where I'm investing, but also on both sides of the table, where I'm investing and also co-building, right? One of the biggest, to answer all three questions, I would say that it's the storytelling, right? It's not where is the finance, how is the finance coming, etc. It's storytelling, creative storytelling, one, and two, measurable outcomes. right? Because there's a lot of jargon, there's a lot of confusion, and there's a lot of solutions that are out there. How can we differentiate ourselves as a startup or a business, or even a like a larger business, right? That's trying to get into the climate space. It's what are you trying to solve? Who are your target customers, and where are they reaching? Where are you able to interact with them? So that's really the source of anything. And being creative, right? So like I said, urban issues are such a large problem, but organizations and governments are not prioritizing it. So you need hyperlocal action, you need technology that solves for it, and that's how you look at it. And from my perspective, I would say that this is my answer.
So because we're short on time, we just have 1.5 minutes left. So I mean, COP is also a networking event. You guys can connect after this and have those conversations. If we can have the last two answers very quickly by one of the panelists.
So I can
Oh,
take
go ahead.
the one about impact. So currently I'm working at the Blender Finance company, which is figuring out how to use philanthropic capital to attract commercial capital. And prior to this, for 2 years, I was working at the Impact Investors Council. So I think once it comes to for impact first enterprises, I think the first thing is just to have because like a major concern right now is a lot of people are pushing towards climate, and once you start investing in climate, you can use the positioning of being an impact investor, even though you might have be a commercial first investor. So I think as an organization, personally, if you are able to figure out like an intersection with climate, I think that definitely helps. The other portion is within the uh, impact investing ecosystem, there's already an association. So there is a push that's happening around knowledge as well, like how much money has been invested in agriculture, health, education in the past 10 years. So I think that also drives credibility on how the sector is growing, what is the market size, what opportunities are already out there. So I think it's just about ecosystem players coming together, such as Climate Collective as well, who are nurturing the ecosystem and giving and putting the spotlight and giving them more opportunities.
Thank you, Sagar. On that note, I would like
Can I
to. Yeah,
because
we
it's
just have 1 minute left.
related. Yeah. Just very quickly, and we can have a dialogue again later. What do you mean by social impact enterprises is one like definition that we need to sit and figure out, because I feel like if we talk about any enterprise today and we say that, okay, only unicorns are the ones that are fine, but unicorns also started small at some point. Now social impact enterprises means, do you not have scalability? Are you going to remain a small organization all the time? Are you going to be dependent on grants? That is one question. And if that's the case, then it's very hard for such an organization to survive beyond a certain limit. So are we talking about a grant focused organization itself, or are we talking about a sustainable model? And all enterprises needn't be unicorns. They can be very good, smaller, making great impact at a local level organizations that can still not need grant funding beyond a certain point. Right. So
Right.
Thank you, ma'am.
Just 10 seconds to add things. So Excel Tech has partnered with WEF on our Aquapreneur Challenge. So on the water space, we are promoting 10 aquapreneurs each year on their innovative ideas of social impact the things. So definitely there are similar opportunities that people play. So just thought of adding.
Thank you, sir. On that note, I would like to thank the panelists and thank you all for joining us in this conversation. I hope you have a great day ahead. Thank you.